Hello, and thank you for joining this session. Now, today, what I really want to do is focus on how we can learn from the wealth of research exploring the intersection of technology and society and apply those learnings to technology development practices so that we can see kind of tangible changes in the way that technology works for people. But before I do that, I wanted to give you a quick introduction. So as you can see, my name is Sophie Taylor, and I work as a senior digital ethics and innovation consultant at a company called Soprasteria. Well, it's quite a long job title, but essentially what I do is I work with companies to assess their technology project, product, or program and understand the ethical considerations at play. I then work with them to kind of understand how to address those considerations and how to embed more ethical ways of working into their organizations. So one of the first companies that asked us for help with this was Harrow Council. So a couple of years ago, the council decided it wanted to make better use of data to personalize citizens' experiences on the website. And there were three main reasons for this. So they wanted to increase the efficiency of the user journey online. They wanted to make it easier for visitors of the website to kind of see important updates and news about their local area. And thirdly, they wanted to preempt the kind of services that people were going to be needing so that they could deliver them more efficiently. So for example, if you, based on what you were looking at on the website, they thought you might be at risk of becoming homeless, they could then deliver preventative services to support you with housing rather than waiting until it's too late. But the council also recognised that using kind of an increasing amount of data and data-driven services was going to bring new ethical challenges to play. So they brought us in to kind of help explore the data ethics side of this project. So we worked with Harrow over 10 weeks last summer. So we started by sharing our digital ethics knowledge and generating interest and excitement through things like storytelling, interactive knowledge sharing sessions, and collaborative activities to look at different case studies and what considerations might be at play. We then worked with the team to understand their organizational culture. So we ran a series of workshops, you can see one that we did online on the bottom left, to identify any barriers or enablers to embedding ethics into their ways of working. And that involved looking at things like how decisions are made, how different teams work together, and how much of a voice employees feel like they have in making change. Thirdly, as you could see on the top right, we went out and spoke to citizens and we wanted to bring their views into the process. So we drew on this infographic that was developed by our partners at the ODI and used participatory interview methods to kind of develop a shared language around types of data and different kinds of data use so that we could have a very kind of open conversation about what kind of data citizens felt comfortable sharing and what kind of situations they felt it was right for the data to be used about them by the council. Finally, you can see on the bottom right, we used our proprietary assessment tool to do a deep dive into the ethics of the personalization project through the lens of these 7 categories. So as you can see there, societal impact, displacement, skills and work, fairness, equality, diversity and accessibility, environmental sustainability, transparency, privacy and safety. And looking through kind of all these different perspectives and angles at the personalization project really let us kind of bring to light a variety of ethical considerations that we could then draw on existing research and best practice to start to tackle. So having these kind of 3 main work streams, so the user research, the internal culture, and the external research and best practice, really let us take a rounded view of identifying and prioritizing the ethical considerations at play in this project. And as we were co-creating the digital ethics strategy and roadmap with Harrow Council, we consistently referred back to the views of residents, the influence of the culture, and the learnings from our assessments and research. So we kind of had these questions to kind of look back at and assess on a regular basis. And what that meant was that the strategy we co-created wasn't just citizen-centered and in line with the ambitions of the council and their ways of working, but it was also realistic and practical to implement. And for us, that was really central to taking ethics from theory into kind of more practical change. So as a result, the roadmap that we created highlighted kind of named and accountable members of staff and a realistic timeline within which we could see change so that when we measured those KPIs over the next kind of 3, 6 and 12 months, we could see what change had been made, who would be accountable for that happening, and what kind of areas of progress we might need to go back to and look at in more detail. So we finished the project in September last year, and the work that we did at the beginning of kind of building interest and making ethics real for Harrow has really paid off, and they've completely run with it. So they've already made changes to the way that they interact with citizens in their technology development process. So they use research and user-centered design methods and have brought that into their kind of standard ways of working so that the citizen's voice is at the center of how technology is developed by the council. They've also completely transformed the way that they explain their use of data through things like their privacy policy, their cookie pages, and their GDPR principles. And they've also linked to those pages in more places so that those citizens who do want to understand more about data use are able to do so quickly and easily rather than kind of sifting through different web pages. And that really addressed some of the key challenges that we identified in the user research. Now, they also changed their privacy policies and cookie description pages. So we had identified that they could use the Flesch-Kincaid index to understand how readable those pages were for the general public, avoiding things like more technical jargon. And since then, their readability score has almost doubled, which means that those citizens, again, who are interested in finding out more detail can really easily understand how their data is used. And that work has already had huge success for Harrow. So Harrow are really interested in building trust with citizens. And as part of the project, we built a trust and transparency survey so that we could measure how these changes were going to impact trust over time. So we measured it as a baseline last year, and then they reran the survey in February this year. And thanks to these changes that they've made, they've already seen huge improvements. So 11% more residents report trusting Harrow to protect their data. 9% more residents report trusting the council to use their data in their best interest. 9% more citizens understand how the council uses their data to improve council services. And 8% more report understanding what data the council collects about them when they access council services online, which given the scope of time is quite transformational change. And it's not over yet. So Harrow still plan on continuing working through the roadmap that we co-created with them and regularly reviewing with us to understand what kind of progress they've made and what kind of tweaks they might want to make in the future. So all in all, for us, it was a really successful project, and I thought it might be useful to highlight our key lessons from taking ethics from theory into practice. So the first thing is to get buy-in from the start. So it was really useful to take the time to speak to people from different areas in the organisation, to understand their needs and challenges, and make it really clear what impact they were able to have. So we had huge success with things like storytelling or working on case studies together to understand the role of different individuals in affecting change. And that meant that people were really emotionally invested in the project from the start, and that they were going to understand how their work fit into the changes that we proposed. Next thing is to speak to users. So there's really only so much that you can predict and understand from desk-based research about the ethics of technology. And in this case, I found it really useful to take a participatory approach. So I drew on techniques from disciplines like critical pedagogy to kind of uncover techniques for discussing different themes that affect people's lives. So in particular, I was inspired by Paulo Freire's technique for uncovering generative themes, which uses what he calls codifications, or you can think of as kind of prompts, to kind of generate discussions around the themes that shape people's lives. And in particular, I was looking to understand things about data collection, consent, bias, fairness, and transparency through representations of and discussions around common daily experiences that people were easily able to articulate. I also made sure that we spoke to a range of users from different demographic backgrounds, so looking at a variety of kind of race, age, gender, sexuality, disability, to make sure that we not only spoke to kind of a representative proportion of the population, but also uncovered any structural barriers to people's use of or trust in technology that we would need to address in the technology strategy. So third thing was to take into account the council culture. And there was huge value in understanding kind of how different teams work together and who's able to affect change. So we spoke to people from different departments, from kind of more senior decision makers down to more junior members of staff. And that helped us to make sure that when we were developing the roadmap, the kind of the people who were named and accountable were going to be able to be empowered to make change, and that we were also understanding different perspectives and any kind of contradictions that we needed to understand within the council culture. Fourthly, we wanted to build on the huge range of existing work in this space and across the globe. So what we really wanted to do was uncover Harrow's kind of needs and challenges relating to digital ethics, and then match that with existing best practice from organizations like the OECD, the European Commission, the Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation, the ICO, and countless more. And that made sure that we were kind of drawing on existing case studies and practical advice from research organizations through to councils in order to help them understand how change would happen. And finally, a central tenet of our work is to embed practical change. And one of the key ways to do this was to design in measures for accountability. So alongside the recommendations that we provided to the council, we had tailored KPIs to measure change over the next 3, 6, and 12 months. And that's made it really easy to share progress and spot further areas of improvement. So all in all, doing ethics isn't particularly easy, but it's essential. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to see this year's conference really focus on those more practical changes to make across business, policy, and academia. And I hope that today's session helped to illustrate some of the tangible and really valuable results that you can achieve. So thank you for listening, and I'll welcome any questions in the Q&A. Thanks.